Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Drop Balls and Big Calls. This week we have Kiwi musician Jacob Petrossian. In this conversation, Jacob shares his journey exploring personal growth through his music and community. He discusses the significance of rites of passage, the impact of the Christchurch earthquake on his life, and the transition to living in Melbourne. He also talks about his current musical projects and the aspirations for the future, emphasizing the importance of self-discovery and resilience. Enjoy. So tell me, you recently went to Forge. Was that your second time doing that?
It's my first time being a leader, but last I was an initiate, and you only do it once as an initiate because there's no point really doing it twice.
Yeah, sure. Tell me about it. What is it all about? It looked really interesting when I had a look at the website.
Okay, well the number one thing about Forged is to trust the process, and so that basically means I can't really tell you what happens per
Yeah,
se
that's fine.
because a part of the rites, part of the initiation rites, is not really knowing what to expect and coming into it with what they call a beginner's mind. So not having any preconceived notions of what the whole thing's going to be about. But the whole idea behind Forge sort of comes from the fact that in modern Western culture, there's no real rites of passage ceremonies for young men to basically transition them from boyhood to manhood. And any kind of initiation rites there are usually facilitated by peers rather than by elders. And so it's all just dumb shit, like drink a yardie or go drink a slab or just, yeah, stupid stuff. Whereas you kind of think of tribal societies and it's like, okay, 13 years old, which is not a man by today's standards, but 13 years old, all right, you're going to go and kill a lion and bring us its head. And then if you come back, that will show us that you're a man. Um, so at Forge, I will say that you don't go and kill a lion's heads. Thankfully, we don't have lions in Australia.
One of the few things we don't have that can kill you in this country.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. But essentially, it gives young men a space to dive deep into things like grief and anger and just like all the hard emotions that we don't always have the opportunity to go into. And it gives them a space to express them constructively and in a healthy way so that afterwards they can go through life, knowing that they have a community and they have a place where they can actually express all that really hard stuff and they just have tools to be able to navigate life better.
It's amazing. And what made you attend that for the first time? Was it last year or a couple of years back now? You
It
went for the
was
first time.
last, yeah, yeah,
It was last year. Yeah. What made you? Well, how did you find it first and foremost? I should say. How did you find it first, and what led you down that path?
yeah. Well, it's a pretty fun story. Um, think I think the first ever kind of men's group that I'd attended was actually an online one based in Christchurch, and I was living in Melbourne at the time, and a good friend of mine was hosting like a men's group there, and I thought, oh, gee, this is really cool, and it's really awesome to hear the stories of these other guys. And so, kind of the early part of the first lockdown in 2020, I remember thinking, well, you can't play. I can't play gigs. I can't go to band practice or go to open mic nights. So where am I going to meet people? Maybe I'll try the dog park. I'm just sitting at a dog. I don't have a dog, by the way. So yeah, I'm just sitting at a dog park in West Footscray in Melbourne's inner west, and I must have been journaling. And the guy on sort of the next bench across from me, he's like, "Oh, is that a bit of a journal that you're doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And so just got talking with him, and it turns out this guy actually had a men's group in West Footscray, but we weren't meeting up in person. But he told me about this online circle that was happening like in the next week or so, and they had a guest speaker from Queensland who happened to be one of the guys from Centre for Men and Families Australia, and that's the organisation that runs Forged, and also Forged it's an event for guys between 18 and 30, and then 30 plus there's men's rites passage, which they also run every year. So that guest speaker, his name's Steve Freeman, and I ended up doing a bit of counselling with him, or getting a bit of counselling with him, I should say, over the course of 2020. And he at the time was pretty well involved with the community. I believe he still is. And so he kind of pointed me in that direction. And so I knew it was something I wanted to do one day. But yeah, 2024 is sort of when I pulled the trigger and committed to it.
And so when you say you were counselled by this guy,
Mm-hmm.
was it just sort of you were feeling quite a lack of community and there was some unresolved things that you were going through throughout the COVID period that led you down that path?
Yeah, well, it was sort of like, looking back now, I really didn't know myself well. And I'm sure, like a lot of people, the lockdowns and whatnot was a time where people really got to know themselves well. And for me, the way I thought about it was like, okay, I'm working a cool job, I'm exercising regularly, I'm playing in 2 sick bands, and I'm working on music. Why do I feel like crap? And it was sort of like, well, okay, if I can't answer this on my own, then maybe I should look at getting some help. And just through the course of like having sessions with him and doing my own inner work, and I'm pretty big on like journaling and stuff. And so just kind of committing to all those practices really, opened my eyes up to maybe this is what I need to live a happy life.
That's awesome, man. That's so good. Because you're not all that old either, right? You're not even 30 yet, right? And you've
That you
been
say, but I'm 31.
one now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, obviously back then though, you're sort of only mid to late 20s, and you were able to reflect on that. Like that takes a lot of maturity to do that for one.
Mm.
It took me a lot longer to sort of do those things myself, even though I knew consciously like I felt shit. But in fact, you probably, I think when you first moved over here was probably when I was at one of my lowest ebbs. But yeah, it takes a lot of maturity and self-reflection to do that. Has journaling always been like, how long have you been doing journaling for? Like, have you been doing that a long time, like even before all that sort of went down, or was that as a result of the counseling?
Yeah. I think I'd say probably like 9 years or so. The first time I really committed to journaling was when I traveled to Europe for the first time in 2015. But I was more so just documenting what I did throughout every day rather than how I felt or what I was going through. If I look through though that journal now, like sure, there's probably a little bit of that, but sort of 2016 onwards, just started to kind of go into just maybe observe my thoughts a bit more and just write random shit down just to express myself somehow.
That's great, mate. That's awesome. So obviously you're a singer and songwriter, guitarist extraordinaire. We'll come to that. Was lyric writing a form of that? Do you think over the years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I think for me, when it really started to become a bit more of I wouldn't say less of a creative expression, but sort of more tapping into like, I don't know, let's say like truth seeking, if you will. I think that sort of started back in 2013. I distinctly recall I was playing a show with Awaken Inferno, um, back in Christchurch in 2013, and we were playing to like a good crowd. It was like 300 people, which in Christchurch,
That's huge.
that's huge, massive. That's like 10% of the town. No, I was singing the song, which was like about a soldier fighting a dragon, and I'm like, wow. That was the first time where I was like, man, I'm like preaching this message that I cannot get behind at all. And sure, like if I was able to, I'd definitely be able to express myself in that way a bit better now. But at that time, it was like, man, if I'm gonna if I'm gonna sing so passionately about something, it's got to be about something that I can get behind. And so, I guess in the way of lyric writing, that's when what you might find in some of my journals would, you know, find its way into the songs I was writing.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's go way back, my friend. We'll go back to the beginning if you will, and that'll lead us nicely into a lot of the stuff that we've started to cover. I believe you picked up guitar when you were an infant. No, I think you were about 7, right?
A little bit older.
A
A
little
little
bit
bit.
older, yeah.
Yeah. I was 10 when I had my first guitar lesson.
So, what led you down that path? Was there a fascination with the instrument, or was it quite a musical family you were from?
Well, so I've got a brother, Nathan, who's 5 years older than me, and when you're a toddler, 5 years is a huge age gap. So growing up, Nathan was my hero, and Nathan's a brilliant piano keys player. And so initially, when the thought came of learning to play music, I think the idea was, okay, sure, I'll just do keyboard because that's what my brother's doing. Sweet, no problem with that. And I used to watch Nathan play with his intermediate rock band, which when I say intermediate, I mean like intermediate school, and that was always cool. That was cool to see some live music. But I don't know, something drew me to the electric guitar, and I recall saying to my dad, possibly after one of Nathan's performances, "Dad, I want to play electric guitar." And I reckon I would have been like 7 or 8 at the time. And I recall my sister saying, "You just want to play guitar to be cool." And I look back at that and I'm like, yeah, damn right I do.
That sounds like a typical Kiwi response.
Yeah.
Just want to be cool, bro. Just want to be cool.
Yeah, that's
Um, and you grew up in the eastern suburbs of Christchurch, didn't you, in the Aranui area?
yeah. So I went to high school initially at Aranui. I went to 3 different high schools, not because I
Did
was
you
the
really?
but yeah, 3 high schools. An earthquake was responsible for that, not my behaviour or anything like that. So no, I initially grew up in Burwood, and then when I was 10, we moved to Avondale.
Oh, sure, nice one.
So
Geez,
literally
look,
one suburb over from Aranui.
yeah. Geez, we must have been nearly neighbours for a period there because I lived in Avondale for geez, probably a good 5 or 6 years, I reckon. Yeah. What was the name of the street? Tenby Place was the name of the street.
Yeah, okay. So by Australian standards, yes, we were neighbours, which means anything within a half an hour radius.
Yes,
But
yes.
like I would almost say that me and you are neighbours right now, even though we live like 40 to 50 minutes drive from each other. But in Christchurch, we're not quite neighbours, but still not super far away. East
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, nice one, mate. So, your brother's obviously a key influence in finding the guitar.
Mhm.
It seemed to me like, but because I met you on the youth circuit, I think when we were geez, we're going way back now, mate. You're testing my memory.
Like Rock and Ray's 2008, I reckon.
That would be exactly it. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe 16 or something like that. You were, I think, at the time only, I think, 12 or 13.
Yeah, 13 would have been.
Judging by like the quality of your performance, I think you obviously developed your love of guitar into an obsession pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. It took a little bit because the first guitar teacher I had um, didn't really teach me a lot of stuff that I was like super keen on. And I'd suggest things like, "Oh, can we do Metallica?" Or like, I don't know, just throw out all other like metal bands at the time, Pantera, whatever. And he wasn't really teaching that. So I'd go off on my own. And when I learned how to read tabs, that was Pandora's box right there. But it was my second guitar teacher who I started learning from when I was 12. He just kind of catapulted me into guitar. Like prior to playing guitar, I think I wanted to be a wrestler when I grew up.
Oh, I love it.
I, and then I think I was playing a little bit of rugby at school as well, at primary school. But honestly, as soon as I properly dived into guitar, that was it. Forget the
Amazing.
rest. Get the rugby.
And you're a mettler. You loved your
Yeah,
metal music. Was
absolutely.
that sort of the foundations of you as an artist and performer? Was this metal background, or
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
have to find that?
I sort of I knew it pretty early on.
Yeah, amazing. So, who were some of your key influences in your guitar playing? Who did you idolize as you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean Metallica. Like I had a full dive into Metallica at 12 years old, and that was like the birth of YouTube as well. So that coincided really well. And yeah, that was almost 20 years ago. And to this day, I can still honestly say and confidently say that Metallica are my all-time favorite band. But yeah, prior to that, I reckon I would actually say that Guns N' Roses were one of the first bands I got like really obsessed about. And it was when we were on a family holiday here in 2005, and my brother bought Guns N' Roses' greatest hits from like the Queen Victoria markets or something. And so we drove as a family from Melbourne to Sydney along the coast, and we basically listened to that and Metallica's Black Album for the whole trip.
That's so good. Geez, that would have felt like a massive trip for a young New Zealander at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was, the my measurement at that time was probably like the drive between Christchurch and Nelson, and
Yeah.
so it was that, but twice. But luckily, we did it over 2 days, so it
Nice.
was pretty much like, oh, we're going to Nelson. Wake up the next day, oh, we're going to Nelson again.
Yeah, awesome, mate. That's really cool. So largely, it sounded like your brother was sort of that key driver in finding that music.
Big time, 100%. Yeah, he showed me a lot of great stuff, and it's kind of funny looking back because I never admitted to liking something unless I knew that Nathan liked it. Uh, but there was one time where I sort of formed my own opinion, and I was 5 years old, and I see an ad for Linkin Park Hybrid Theory on TV,
How
and
good.
I just hear this like blonde haired spiky dude yelling, "And I'm about to break!" And I'm like 5 years old, and I'm like, "Wow, this is cool. I hope Nathan likes this."
And did
And
he?
Nathan said he liked it, and I'm like, "Yeah, cool, we're good."
Oh, lucky, very lucky. Otherwise, you would have been out the door.
Yeah, pretty much.
And when did so? Like I said, when I met you, you had a band called Awaken Inferno. This is 2008 at this point. When did that group start forming?
So initially, myself and the drummer Sam Jones, we started jamming at intermediate school, and Sam kind of showed me it was the first dose of like that thrill of playing in a band and playing with a drummer who could keep the beat. We had like a four-piece band at the time, and I think we were playing Enter Sandman, Metallica, and then there were some times where it would just be me and him jamming together, and we'd just like make stuff up, and all of a sudden we'd written a song by the end of that year. So I started writing my first songs at age 12, and the way I started was literally by like ripping off Metallica riffs. Like I'd take some riff and I'd change like a note or two in it, and sure, that's pretty cringe. Like I wouldn't want to be doing that as a 31-year-old, but if I had a 12-year-old student doing that, I'd be like, mate, go to town. You're young. You're gonna grow from here.
Yeah, so good. And so, what do you remember of those early sessions? Like, obviously, you're writing your first songs. You're probably now starting to reach out into your first gig. Was Rock and Raise your first gig, or had you done sort of some things before that?
Oh, I done a. Oh, yeah. I've done a few things before that. Mostly stuff that was just organised by the school.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I believe it was like late 2007 with my other band, Corrupted Omen, at the time, and I reckon that's actually where we met. But Rock and Raise was also around the time that Awaken Inferno kind of properly started. But yeah, I would say my first public gig that wasn't organised by a school would have been Corrupted Omen. I can't remember if it was November 24th or 25th, 2007.
yeah. You're now in front of audiences. Was that a really good outlet for you? Do you remember a lot of those early shows?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's some shows where like a lot of specific details would be, yeah, a bit of a blur, but absolutely, man. Like just that, like it had always been my dream to perform in front of people. Like from the age of 7, I was dreaming about playing pop punk and new metal bangers in front of my classmates. And then finally, 2006, I was age 12. Yeah, that was like finally becoming a reality. And a really interesting thing was myself and Sam, the drummer from Awaken. we performed in front of my syndicate. Syndicate is like a small group of classes, so maybe like 2 to 3 classes at a school. And we performed a set of Enter Sandman and this one original that we'd written. And I remember playing it, kind of doing the motions, and the guys, like the classes, liked it. They applauded. They were like, "Yeah, nice one." And I think some of the other kids were like away at something for a little bit. So then they'd come in halfway through the performance. And so the teachers were like, "Oh, just play the songs again." I'm like, "Cool, all right, let's do it." But I had a group of mates down the back, and at the time, believe it or not, you'll remember this, Jace, I had really long, kind of sideshow bob style curly hair.
It was amazing.
And they kind of called out to me from the back. They were like, "Jacob, headbang." And so I was kind of looking at them like shit scared, and I'm just like, all right, all right. So then I just started shaking my hair and windmilling and stuff. And I'll tell you what, the difference between the first time we'd played the songs when I was just kind of standing there and playing the songs again with stage presence, played the exact same songs. The only thing that was different was that I put an energy. The crowd reaction was night and day. It was like second half, by showing stage presence, it was like a standing ovation. And from that day, I just learned, like, get over yourself. You're putting on a show.
Fed the monster. So it was quite a big learning curve for you then.
Massive.
Yeah.
And yeah, I distinctly recall, like, after that performance, playing at Yes 7 Assembly, which is now it's in front of like 400 to 500 kids as opposed to like 60. And yeah, straight away just start headbanging, and like, yeah, there's a few people laughing in the crowd. And I remember at the time, like, that laughing just like fed the beast, as you said, like, just tap into that, because by the end of it, they're loving it.
I found those school assemblies like such a good foundation. It's such a good place to learn because they're obviously, everyone's seated. You're all in the same uniform,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. In New Zealand, we've got a bit of tall poppy syndrome going on as well. I mean, it sounded like you had some really supportive people around you, which is great. But I found that really good. Like, you sort of almost had to take your show to them, and try and get them to move. And I used to love, like, you'd see in those bright can lights that you used to have on the roof in the auditorium. Like, I used to love, like, seeing a couple of people get up in the back, even though you had no idea who they were.
Mm-hmm.
But that would almost, you just look for those like little moments to sort of feed you in your performance.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I recall, like, back in those days, whenever we'd play a show at the holy ground of Zebedee's, Christchurch,
Yes.
you know, back in those days, like, it was almost like your validation on how good you were as a band was based on how big your mosh pit was.
Yes. 100%. Deputies, man. I was thinking about that place the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and just what a great thing that was for the youth of Christchurch. Guys like us that, we didn't come from a lot, and just to have a place to play as an underage musician,
Yep.
like that was so good, and the equipment was great. And I used to love that. Remember that photo wall next to the
Oh,
load-in
like,
door?
bands who would perform there.
Yeah, and just seeing, Zed and, a whole bunch of other great artists on there from around the country, like that was so cool.
Yeah, the platform at the venue was just invaluable. Like, I truly believe that if Zebedee's wasn't a thing and there was nothing like it, my journey as a musician would be very different.
Me
I
too.
wouldn't be where I am today without it. So I just want to shout out to Steve White, the man who carried that place for so many years.
Oh, 100%. I actually just got goosebumps when you said that. Like, he put so much into that. And, I guarantee you he made no money doing that.
No,
Like,
lot even.
nah, selling soft drinks and, underage tickets for kids. Like, there would have been no money there. And he just put his heart and soul into that place for so many years. Yeah, very, very grateful to him, as I'm sure there's, thousands of other kids that would feel the same way.
Yeah, 100%, man.
So you're now into getting into high school. You mentioned we'll come into the sort of turbulent years in a sec, but you had been playing quite a while at this point. What sort of impact did going into high school make on you musically?
Oh man. Well, firstly, I was lucky to have great teachers at at the high school at Aranui. And I distinctly recall Bob, Kevin Roberts is his name, but we called him Bob. I recall I was in year 9 music, and the rest of the class were doing like No Woman, No Cry on keyboard. And Bob just says to me, "You're wasting your time being here. Here's the keys. Go unlock a room and just practice your guitar. Go."
Oh, that's so good.
So I was, very lucky to have that, to have those people around.
Bob's name's come up a few times in conversation with a few friends growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just sounded like he really had all your best interests at heart and was like super supportive to anyone.
Yeah, 100%. Completely unorthodox teaching style. Yeah, like especially by today's standards, very un-PC and not your typical teacher. I was going to say a high school teacher, but teacher in general. But that's what we loved about him. And the crazy thing is that he, out of every teacher in the school, he probably had the least behavioural issues.
Yeah, it sounds like he sort of really wanted to cater to each student's strengths, which I think the education system really is missing, right? I myself was very fortunate to have just a couple of teachers that really honed in on those things, not only for myself but for others as well, and just made such a big. That's probably the only reason I stayed for as long as I did was because of the teachers that I had. Sounds like he was exactly the same, just catering to those strengths and trying to push you to be better and spend time on your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and to and to recognize that, well, maybe your time is spent better doing this thing as opposed to the thing that the curriculum has for you at the moment.
Mm. So when the quakes sort of hit, how long have you been at Aranui at this point when the Christchurch quakes happened?
I was year 12 when it
So
happened.
you're coming towards the back end of high school.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the first 2 years of Aranui were really difficult. Like I loved Chisnall Intermediate, and it's also probably just a different dynamic being, you got 900 kids who are roughly the same age as you. And when I mean roughly, because anything more than a 2-year age gap at that age is like that's a big gap. Yeah. Whereas like you've got year 7 and year 8, and there's 900 of them. Like it's it's a different dynamic to year 9 to 13, and there's, I don't know, roughly the same amount of people. But yeah, going back to what you said about Tall Poppy, I remember first 2 years of high school, I happened to hook up with a girl who was, she was like top 5 hottest girls at school. Not gonna lie, and like when most people hear that, they're like, "Oh man, you must have been the king," and I'm like, "Well, dude, I got shat on by everyone around me. It was brutal those first 2 years of high school." But you know, part of that also is just being the youngest, being year 9 out of 13. And then I would genuinely say year 11. Well, I was single at that point, but year 11 kind of being in that middle ground was a year that I really enjoyed, and I also got a lot out of the music program at that time as well.
Yeah. What do you mean in terms of the music program? What were some of the key things?
Yeah, I'd say the highlight was playing in the jazz band, which at Aranui wasn't your typical kind of playing jazz standards and whatnot. It was more of like a Motown covers band.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and at the time, that's exactly what I needed. Like I dabbled in jazz band in prior years, particularly at Chisnallwood, which was good fun. But it never seemed to gel with me for the first couple of years. But having that kind of middle ground of like playing Motown stuff where it's a bit funkier and it's a bit edgier, and you can still use like your pentatonic scales and blues scale. Uh, that was a good little introduction for me to start playing that kind of music.
Oh, amazing. What do you uh, when you were that age? Like, what were you dreaming about? Like, there's quite a bit of pressure on kids from that point through to year 13 with your NCEA,
Mm,
studies of starting to think about where you sort of want to head career wise, which is a lot of pressure for a young fella. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, Jacob.
yeah,
Um, but what was music sort of like the key thing for you? That was always what you were going to pursue.
there's a yeah. sort of as you're going through the school system, there's a strong emphasis of like, okay, whatever it is you want to do, go do it at tertiary level. And so all through high school, it's like, yep, you're going to go to jazz school. You're going to go to jazz school. But to answer your question about what I was dreaming about, and this is still the dream for me, and it's to play in a kick-ass band that tours the world. Plain and simple. How I'm going to get there, okay, I'm still finding that. I found the kick-ass band, but touring the world, still working on that one. But yeah, it's yeah, music's just always been that thing for me. So yeah, jazz school was really where I was heading, and thankfully, in the last 3 years of high school, I was able to really hone in on that, based on the education that was provided at the places I went to.
But was your guitar teacher at this point part of the school programs, or was this external to what was happening at school?
So my second guitar teacher, Leroy Edgar, absolute legend. Shout out to you if you're listening. Yeah, he's a bit of a legend in Christchurch. For anyone who's had lessons with him, yeah, he's always had a great impact on the kids. And so Leroy was my guitar teacher from when I was 12 to 17. And part of the reason why I stopped having lessons with him was actually because I moved to Nelson. And so so during that period, like, sort of, yeah, as I said, I'm also, when I started high school, so kind of 14 to 17, I was actually going to him after school. So I'd have my school day at Aranui, and then I'd walk over to Chisnellwood and then have a guitar lesson with Leroy at like 4 or 5 p.m. or whatever time. And but at the same time, I also did have a second guitar teacher at the school, which was provided by the, I guess, Department of Education or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you had plenty of avenues there with honing your craft, which is great. You mentioned Nelson. I didn't realize you had a stint in Nelson. When did that happen?
For Christchurch earthquake, it's about 2 or 3 days after, and we'd sort of done everything that we could do because we were in the red zone,
Yeah.
Avondale, right by the
Well,
river.
let's start with that. So, what do you remember of that day? Obviously, hugely traumatic, but tell me your day, how it sort of unfolded.
Okay, so I want to preface this by, so I'm sure guests of your podcast know this by now, but about 6 months beforehand, or five, if my math is correct, September the 4th, 2010, there was another big earthquake, as you know, Jace. I actually slept through that one. I'd played a gig at Owlsbar with Awakened Inferno, and at the time, it was the best gig that we played. Just loved it, absolutely loved it. Got home at about 2:30. I was absolutely wrecked, and yeah, sure enough, the earthquake happened at 4:30. I slept through it.
That is absolutely amazing. Like, geez, this tinnitus and like stage buzz isn't wearing off very quickly.
Yeah. Perks of being a teenager, I guess.
That is
So,
unbelievable.
yeah. February 22nd, 2011. Go to school. In school, for whatever reason, I think there was like a nationwide teachers meeting happening that day. So school finished early. Finished at like period 4, so 12:20. And it's just really funny. I almost play it back in my mind like a horror movie or something. There's like some people and some friends of mine who I had like brief interactions with, but they just felt eerie. Yeah, I can't explain what it is, but anyway, get home. And I did use, what I was doing most days as a teenager. I was just playing computer games or something. I don't know, like SimCity, or I was playing like Pokemon on an emulator. And then the shaking starts to happen. And because I hadn't felt the massive one back in September, it had just kind of been all these aftershocks at that point. And so the shaking happened, and I'm like, oh, it's another aftershock. But something got me straight away to get up and stand under the door frame. And I just looked around me at the most violent shaking that I'd ever seen in my life. And like the house rattling and pictures being tilted on their sides. And where I was standing was a door frame sort of between the dining room / kitchen and another lounge. And we had this big double fridge. And I saw it full smack bang, like a meter in front of me. So had I been in the kitchen when that happened, like, I don't know, either I would have been seriously injured or like not here right now. And it was just me and mum at home at the time. And I just remember thinking, holy shit. Not thinking, I was saying it. I was like, holy shit, freaking out. And then I was really scared because I was calling out for mum and I couldn't hear. I didn't know where she was. And then I saw her out the front. She must have been in the backyard or something. And then she came out the front of the house and just crying and shock. So we comforted each other. We were hugging it out on the front driveway. And then a big aftershock happened. I think it was like 5.9 or something. And then I saw water just start to bubble up on the road. And that's when I'm hugging mum and I'm just like, shit. And there's very few moments in my life where there's a distinct before and after, and that's absolutely one of them. So over the course of that day, it was like, okay, the house is flooding now. We don't have power. We don't have running water. I don't know where my family are. My brother and sister and dad were just elsewhere, you know. One of the neighbours, he brings out a radio with the emergency news, and you're hearing like, there's been people killed in the CBD. Just, wow, crazy day, absolutely crazy day, and there's a lot that I kind of during that time I really suppressed and pushed down, in the sense of I didn't really acknowledge how traumatic it was. Just kind of roll with it because you don't really have any other choice.
I don't think people can quite understand, like, it sounds like it's one major event, right? And say for those that live here in Melbourne, like, I think there was a magnitude 6 way out in Whoop Whoop a few years back, and everything swayed for a minute, but there was no real sort of after activity of that.
No.
What I've sort of had to explain to people here over the years, because I moved about the year after that Quake, and what I had to sort of explain to people was, it's not just that one event. You were right to preface that. We actually had that major one the year before. We then had all those aftershocks afterwards. We then had Boxing Day was pretty big aftershocks that year as well in 2010. And then February though was like that was another level. Like I felt that first one, that one in February was a hell of a lot bigger. And I don't think people quite understand, what that aftermath looks like. Like, those shocks do not stop. Like, it is just constant. You're talking no control whatsoever. And I lived obviously around the corner from you, and obviously we had the liquefaction problem. So there's that liquid, that concrete like liquid coming up through the surface, but the Avon riverbed, which was pretty much in between us, has now had the floor of it pushed up, and high tide's coming in, and it is flooding everything. So that's the flooding you're referring to. You got no power, you got no sewage, no running water whatsoever. You can't call anyone because all the phone lines are down. You don't know where your family are, and it's just constant. And so you are in this sort of fight or flight mode, and it doesn't, like, we're talking weeks and months like that you're not able to even comprehend what you've gone through. To your point, and I think people really struggle to sort of understand that perspective. It doesn't end. It's ongoing. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, and then the way, like, I didn't notice it for a long time, but the way kind of PTSD can play into that.
Yes.
I recall working a warehousing job early in my days in Melbourne, and at the time they were testing out like a really loud PA system, and and the way that the warehouse was rattling reminded me of an earthquake, and like I was getting like, it just felt really anxious being there. But anyone else who hasn't gone through that's fine, and so it's been there's definitely a bit of acceptance there that, this thing that I live with, and you as well, was like pretty fucking traumatic.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, it was brutal. And so, were you just sort of hanging out at home for that next few days before you took off to Nelson? What did the next couple of
So
days look like?
the next couple of days, there's this beauty in it which had never happened before, and it happened with a lot of families and households around Christchurch. But we'd have lunch with our neighbours. We'd lived at that place for about 7 years, almost 7 years at that point, and we'd like hardly interacted with our neighbours. But now, almost because we were forced to, we couldn't keep our things in the fridge cool, so now we had to like go have barbecues with our neighbours. And so essentially the days were about cleaning up the street. So that means digging up the liquefaction from the gutter so that water could flow freely, pulling up carpets in the house, cleaning up the house however you could. One of my guitars, my prized guitar, actually fell over in the quake. I had a speaker cabinet and a cab which stayed still.
No way.
Fucking incredible.
Wow.
But,
That's, yeah, miracle.
like, I look back now, it's like, $200 Chinese knockoff guitar, but whatever. Anyway, it fell. And and believe it or not, my guitar wasn't a priority at that time when it was sort of life and death. And but it wasn't until a few hours later, when the house had already flooded, that I noticed that the guitar was on the ground in the dirt, in the water. And so yeah, that got pretty wrecked. But yeah, it was just about cleaning up the street, our house, helping our neighbours out however we could. And then, sort of like, once we'd done everything that we could, and we were just waiting for some kind of like council support or whatever. Remember, mum wakes me up, and so this would be like 3 days after. Mum wakes me up, and she's like, "Do you want to go to Nelson today?" So I thought, sure, let's go to Nelson. So we went up to Nelson, and then we get up there, and my uncle was like, "Do you want to start school on Monday?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And it's crazy because I think the previous year I'd started hanging out with foreign exchange students. Like, I mean, real foreign exchange students, like people actually from overseas, like from Germany and Brazil and Estonia and whatnot. But there was a part of me that was like, yeah, I think it would be cool to be a foreign exchange student. I got to live the dream by going up to Nelson, and I went to Waimea College up there. And the initial plan was kind of to stay there for just the rest of the term. And then it got to the rest of the term, and I thought, wow, it doesn't really feel right to go back to Christchurch. Like, I really want to see this through. And so ended up staying up there for the rest of that year. And it ended up being an incredibly pivotal and formative year in my life.
Yes, you really made the most of it. Yeah. It was very bizarre, like that. You talk about that feeling of it didn't feel right to go back to Christchurch. Like, I wasn't at school at the time; I was working, but I felt almost exactly the same. Like, I'd been to Dunedin, and then we went up to Nelson as well for a short period.
Yeah, okay.
And by then, yeah, I'm getting calls about, when are you thinking of coming back to work and all this sort of stuff. I worked in Ferrymead at a bar and restaurant out there, and
Was that Winnebagos?
it was, yeah,
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 I remember those days.
yeah. It was good times, mate.
Shout out to Mike Knowles.
Yes, shout out to Mike Knowles. He's a legend of a bloke. That guy taught me a lot. But yeah, he was my manager there and the owner. Yeah, so yeah, I was starting to get sort of calls from him about going back, and when he was sort of thinking about reopening and stuff. But yeah, it felt really weird going back. I felt like, obviously, we'd already been through a lot at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just, I don't know, because we obviously consciously, you knew the CBD was gone. A lot of the things we'd grown up as kids had been demolished, and we knew what we were going back to in terms of aftershocks and that constant sort of vigilance, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. It was very strange. So it's interesting. You said you're saying the same thing, and you stayed on.
Yeah, so I'd go back to Christchurch for the school holidays. Yeah, sort of moving back and going back to Aranui. That, yeah, didn't feel right. And it's really interesting because I recall at the beginning of that year, like as I started school in year 12, I remember kind of having like high aspirations and wanting to aim really big for everything I was doing there, like whether it was band or even like doing good grades. Like, man, my sister was helping me with some maths homework. Like, I can count on one hand the amount of times I did homework through all my schooling years. And maybe it shows, I don't know. But but my sister was actually helping me with my maths homework, which I'd never done before. And then and so when the opportunity came up to move to Nelson, that felt right. That was like, maybe I'm not meant to be here.
Yeah, fascinating. So when you decide to stay on up there, had your parents gone home at this point and your broader family as well, or did Nathan and your sister Nikita, did they stay on as well? Did they head home themselves?
No, they went home maybe after like a week or so of being up in Nelson, and yeah, I stayed on. I was staying with my grandma and step granddad, and yeah, that was it really. So boarding with them.
When did you start to, I guess, see that I don't know, going back there wasn't a possibility?
I think it was close to it was like the third quarter of the year, let's say, and Nathan, my brother, had been to Hagley Community College, which is where Bob or Kevin Roberts worked. And Nathan was telling me about this jazz program that they run there, which essentially prepares you for jazz school. And so I thought, oh, maybe that's the way to do it, because I failed year 12 actually when I did it at Waimea College, and part of that's because I sort of I had to write off the first half of term one. Um, but also it was the fact that I don't know. I couldn't sort of translate things in my head onto paper, like particularly when it came to things like physics and chemistry, and I even did classics, like learning about ancient Greece and stuff, which like sounded really cool. But I just remember the class being like super dry. But yeah, and also instead of studying, I just Nelson's such a beautiful place. I'd just go and walk in the hills behind Grandma's house
Mm.
instead of doing like physics revision. So yeah, it's not all on the schooling system, but basically Hagley provided an opportunity where I didn't have to take typical subjects. All I wanted to do was music, and I had to do a bit of English to get like the literacy credits to get into jazz school. And so that's pretty much what I did. But on top of that, Hagley also provided an opportunity where I could take some cool classes in year 12 to make up for the credits I didn't get. So when I went to Hagley for year 13, which was 2012, I was able to pass level 2 and level 3 in the same year. And the only reason I passed level 3 was because I was able to do multiple music subjects and just hone in on that.
I've heard a lot of good, well, especially back then, heard a lot of good things about Hagley, and just the fact that you were treated like an adult and
Yeah,
and really nurtured.
yep. It's a school that either if you've been kicked out of everywhere else, they'll probably take you, or if you're really self-driven, they'll take you. And for me, yeah, as I said, just not having to conform to the usual schooling system where I could do one music subject and then I'd have to pick like four others. Yeah, that kind of sealed the deal for me. And also the fact that Bob was there, like that was incredible to reconnect with him and to have him as my teacher after like 2 years.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, like year 12, like that, you talk about that first term in a bit, like the ramifications were longer than that though, mate. Like the it was such a disrupted year for I think everybody, regardless of if you had moved up north. Like that, it was pretty tumultuous time, and trying to think about doing anything, getting your brain to work was just difficult enough day to day.
Yeah, yeah. When as you're saying that, I'm just reminded of like the whole recovery process in Christchurch, and just the whole recovery of building, rebuilding the CBD and whatnot, and just I guess I don't want to sound ungrateful, but like how much of a drag that was, just waiting for things to happen.
And reading in the paper and on the news every day, like it's going to take 15, 20 years to rebuild this place, and in the meantime you're constantly moving houses, you've got aftershocks, fucking roadworks everywhere. Like it was horrendously draining.
Yeah, I think during that time, like I was kind of overly optimistic. I'd also say, because I've got older friends who, and like yourself, like, who moved during that time, and like, fair enough. If I was a bit older, if I was out of school and earning a bit of money, like, yeah, I probably would have looked into the same thing as well.
100%.
But I guess I felt like I had to stay there, and so yeah, I just kind of brainwashed myself to be extra optimistic, and that, nah, things are good here.
Well, you were always like a naturally optimistic person. You always had this, and even today, you still have this real positive energy about you,
Thanks,
and really,
man.
really bubbly. It's really cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so, tell me, if you finish year 12 and year 13 at Hagley, you're now stepping out into the real world. What does that look like for you?
It looked like jazz school for about, yeah, for like the first year afterwards, at least. Yeah, stepping into jazz school and committing more to my band at the time, Awakened Inferno, and yeah, meeting all these cool musos, obviously at jazz school, and just kind of changing my whole perception about the guitar and how it can be played and how it can sound. Incredibly formative year. And then at the end of that year, 2013, I kind of ruined it in a way. So I made a very bad mistake for young Jacob, where I decided to watch the incredible movie Into the Wild at the end of my first year of jazz school. And what that did for me was, after years of kind of having this goal of going to jazz school and studying, and in a way being brainwashed by the system a little bit, like, yeah, you're going to go study, you're going to go and get your qualification and your thing that you really like. The movie Into the Wild opened my eyes to, like, oh, why am I studying? I could be traveling. and so, yeah, that was also a bit of a life-changing moment, where I was like, well, I think I might take a bit of a gap here and go and, yeah, go see some places I've never seen before. And I think it's a shame that that's not encouraged in the education system. There were a few tutors at jazz school who really encouraged that. Shout out to Darren Pickering, awesome keys player, great improv teacher at jazz school. But he was fully supportive behind my decision to quit my studies and go travel.
That's amazing. So you had support there, even though it was going to make an impact on what you were doing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I had some resistance as well. And look, all the resistance was, it came from a good place. So I appreciate it.
So when did the move to Melbourne start to come into mind? So you go away and do some traveling,
Hmm.
and take it you came back to Christchurch for a bit, but to me it felt quite short. So
Yeah.
it was quite a quick decision in the end.
Yeah. I mean, look, it dragged on, that decision, but in hindsight, 2.5 years, 3 years, it's not the longest time either. So I guess where it started was, one of my best mates, Cam Burnett, phenomenal drummer, plays with the New Zealand bands. Uh, he he kind of bullied me into coming to Melbourne to see Dream Theater. It was like, you should come with me to Melbourne to see Dream Theater, and I'd say, I don't have money, and he'd say, yes, you do. And that was it. So it didn't take much convincing. So yeah, Cam invited me to go and see Dream Theater, which was October 2014. And I remember bumping into you actually the day of the gig. We were having lunch in St Kilda or something, and
Yes.
you were like, "Oh, it's nice to hear that accent," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, what I did." So
That's right. Because I was living there at the time, and you
yeah,
guys,
bro,
that's memories. How cool.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, Cam and I, we spent like 5 days in Melbourne, and one thing I loved about coming here was, you know, at that time I was just my whole identity was just transfixed to Awaken Inferno. It was like, I'm not Jacob, I'm the guy in this band. And so, and when we came to Melbourne, it was like, this is cool. No one knows who we are. Let's change that. And so it was kind of like an invitation to, I don't know, take over, just be a rock star and run amok or something. But no, to answer your question though, that's where it all started. That was the first seed that was sown. was an awesome 5 days here, and seeing Dream Theater was great. And then 2015, that's the year that a lot of travel happened. Like I traveled all around New Zealand. I came over here again for Soundwave, and we probably bumped into each other at that Soundwave.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, most likely. And so that kind of reaffirmed what I loved about Melbourne, the previous year. And then I spent 3 months over in Europe, just backpacking around, and went to a bunch of metal festivals. Like I went to Wacken Open Air, the great one in Germany. And yeah, all that travel just really opened my eyes to, because that was my first time leaving Australasia. Like getting on that plane from Sydney to Abu Dhabi, this is like, wow, I'm flying west for the first time from Sydney. And that just opened my eyes to the world that's out there. And so maybe this is a topic for another time, but long story short, Awaken Inferno, we ended up breaking up that year prior to me going to Europe. And so when I came back to Christchurch, I didn't really have much going for me. And in the years that followed, it was really just about figuring out, okay, I don't belong here. Where am I going to go? And the initial thought was actually to go to Germany and to just throw myself into the thick of it and see what I can do. And then sort of when I was really planning the move was sort of early 2018. And I thought to myself, well, moving to Germany now is probably like a really big step. And it's one that's a bit too big for me. So let's just start off by moving to Melbourne, because I knew I liked Melbourne. And prior to moving over for the third time, came to scope it out, spend a few days here just to really make sure. And sure enough, when I left Melbourne, I was like, oh, I didn't really feel like leaving. And so that was June 4th, 2018. And the initial step was, okay, I'll come here for like 2 years and then move to Germany. By the time 2 years came around, I realized, well, if I move now, I've got to start from scratch again. I've got to throw away everything that I've worked towards. And I can't be asked doing that.
And then COVID kind of happened anyway.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Yep. And so that time, for the years kind of leading up to, the 2 years that I'd already been in Melbourne at that point, I still had my sights on international travel. And it was during 2020 where I decided, if I'm going to travel overseas, it's going to be because of my music. And so that's when I just really made the commitment. I'm going to like work my ass off here, and this is what's going to take me overseas. And it's taken me back to New Zealand.
A couple of times now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So the next stage is to kind of take it that way rather than that way.
Well, I mean, you're making some great steps, mate. I mean, the unfortunate thing over this side of the world is we're so isolated, right? So it's very difficult, and as you're probably finding out with I guess a lot of labels over this side of the world, is you kind of have to make that step before they even acknowledge you. So you're making all the right moves. But tell us about you've got two bands currently, right? Tell us about those.
Yeah. So I joined Myriad Drone in March 2019, and then I started a band of my own called Paeon in about July 2019. And it's crazy to think I've been playing with these bands for like over 6 years now, because time's just kind of flowing by. So yeah, Myriad Drone. First off, I never thought in 100 years I'd play in a post rock band. Well, as I said, it's been 6 years now, and I'm still having a lot of fun. And in some ways, even though we've done an album together, which was released earlier this year, and we're busy writing new music, and we've got gigs coming up, it still feels like we're just getting started.
That's so good, mate.
Likewise with Paeon, we're currently tracking our second EP, and again, feels like we're getting started. So it's pretty cool place to be in after playing in those bands for 6 years.
How do you sort of balance the two?
Great question. By my bank account suffering. I guess the good thing, particularly about Myriad Drone, is that some of the guys play in other projects. And so it's kind of like when they're busy with that project, Myriad Drone, I don't want to say dies down, but it gets quiet, which means that I have the capacity to go and do other things, like whether it's doing stuff with Paeon, or like I'm practicing stuff for my own YouTube channel or whatever. So I guess it's, in a way, it's other people's schedules that allow me to balance between the two bands.
So good. Hey, I'm conscious of your time, mate, but I'm fucking proud of you, dude. Like, just obviously the back end of your schooling was really difficult. I know how difficult it can be when a band that you'd been in for a decade. When a band ends in general, that's been such an important part of your life, comes to a conclusion. It feels like you're losing a piece of yourself, and you've worked your way through that, and you've settled in a new city, and you've done super well over here with for yourself and the people that you've met. And like I said before, you're just a really positive person, and it sounds like you've been on an awesome journey of self-discovery as well, which I'd love to get into at another time. But yeah, just really proud of you, mate, and appreciate you taking the time to join me in your chaotic afternoon as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Jace. It's great to see you again, man. And likewise. I've genuinely really enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I think you're a great conversationalist. And so, I'm proud of you, man. Proud of you for starting this up and taking the big step, and as well as just everything you've done to look after yourself and be the best person you can be, man. Keep going.
Appreciate it. We need to get that beer.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. A beer in part 2, I say.
That's it. There you go, Jacob Petrossian. Thank you so much for tuning in again to Drop Balls and Big Calls. If you like what you hear, please feel free to leave us a review. We always love to hear what you are thinking about the show and what we can do better. Also, we'd love for you to follow us, like or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast or wherever you're finding us on social media. Every little bit helps. I don't think you realize how much doing something as little as that really helps the podcast grow. Thanks again for listening.